Is there anything that might have stopped the massacre at Columbine? We study pieces of a puzzle, clues about two boys, a deadly friendship, a converging destiny.
I couldn't believe that someone like Dylan could intentionally hurt other people. It was inconceivable that that could be something he could do.
We brought in former FBI agent Mary Ellen O'Toole, one of the world's leading profilers of the criminal brain. She has analyzed thousands of pages of evidence on Columbine and Dylan Klebold, and she concluded there is a turn he's about to take.
I don't think he was always a violent young man. I think it evolved over time.
You don't think school shooters just snap one day?
Absolutely not. I have not ever seen where that has happened. I think he was in a very destructive friendship, which was very powerful, maybe even more powerful than what we think.
Which takes us to another house, another set of hands-on parents. A friend said retired Air Force pilot Wayne Harris was like a Leave It to Beaver dad.
Of course, I met his parents. We wouldn't have allowed our children to play with anybody that we hadn't met their parents or been in their home.
Their son, Eric, has been a pal of Dylan since the 7th grade. No one knows he too has begun to keep a secret journal, and his journal is filled with venomous threats, graphic fantasies about revenge on people who've insulted him, people engulfed in flames, decapitated heads. According to O'Toole, Eric's sadistic, cruel ramblings signal a personality disorder, a psychopathic brain. He calls his writings the Book of God.
These are people without a conscience. These are people without empathy, without guilt.
But is Eric Harris really different from Dylan Klebold? Another expert on Columbine, Dr. Peter Langman, insists he is.
Eric liked to draw weapons. He drew swastikas. He wrote about the Nazis. You know, Dylan drew hearts. Dylan wrote about his search for true love. Eric, when he does refer to girls, is his fantasies of raping them.
Someone who really is psychopathic is incredibly charming. They're manipulative. They are engaging.
Eric writes about his ease going back and forth in a double life. Here, he's in court after the arrest on the van incident, talking to the magistrate with great respect.
What kind of grade did you get? What's your curfew?
The court sentences the boys with leniency, a year of counseling and community service. Sue Klebold has been told by another mother that Eric Harris is prone to angry, terrifying outbursts. But Klebold thinks it's an overreaction because around her, Eric is so polite. And so, like many other boys, Eric and Dylan play video games like Doom. They like violent movies and making little movies of their own, trying on what it's like to be tough guys. In this one, they pretend to be heroic government agents out to save the world. Eric is smooth.
I think we might have to get some more weaponry.
Dylan stumbles.
It's a good thing we ordered those radioactive.
The camera shuts down. And there is something else about the two of them that keeps coming up in research about other school shooters, too. 85% of these shooters are adolescent boys, so many feeling rejected by girls. The experts point to a crisis in masculinity during puberty, and there's a solution they get from everything they're seeing.
In so many films and video games, you can pick up a gun and instantly you have power.
Eric writes, everyone is always making fun of me because of how I look, how weak I am. Guns. I need guns. Dylan asks for one, too.
He had asked me once if I would buy him a gun, and I had told him no.
What was your policy on guns in the house?
We kept no firearms in the house.
But is it possible your son is hiding a gun or a journal about suicide? Sue Klebold says she used to look through his room during his junior year, but by his senior year, she decides to respect his privacy. With distance and regret, she now says how wrong that decision was.
Would you ransack his room now?
I would. I'd do it as if his very life was depending on it, and I would do it with love. Now, in doing something like that, we are violating privacy.
Who's ruling the roost? If that room that you pay the mortgage on is being cut off from you, so you can't go in there, you have a problem. Now, does that mean they're going to go out and commit a mass murder? Not necessarily. But you have to know, you have to understand what's going on with them.
The boys were already getting their hands on guns and hiding them. A girl, a school friend old enough to buy them legally, got them 3 at a gun show, and they get another gun, a semi-automatic, from a private seller. They train at a range.
No.
Eric Harris now writes, "We have guns. I feel more godlike." And Dylan Klebold writes he now has a choice, committing suicide or going NBK with Eric. NBK, Natural Born Killers, the violent revenge movie by Oliver Stone. Which brings us to the central question about Dylan Klebold.
What's up?
Why did he go from suicidal to homicidal? Did Eric infect him with a kind of pathological virus? Or was it Dylan's presence that reinforced Eric's violent fantasies? We have talked to scientists all over the country who are studying how thoughts of violence could rewire the still developing teenage brain. But Mary Ellen O'Toole says all we know tonight is Dylan was now deeply disturbed.
And it was more than just depression.
Do you think Dylan Klebold knew right from wrong?
Yes, absolutely he did. But it did not preclude him from being able to participate in the planning, to go through with it, to enjoy the planning, and to carry it out.
I think everyone can accept he was depressed. Do you think he also had another mental disorder?
Possibly. I think that's possible. I can't tell you what it might have been.
Do you believe in evil?
I don't think so. I don't think I do.
Evil is a spiritual term, and it doesn't have any legal or behavioral meaning, and so I stay away from it.
At this point, the clock is ticking down. It is now 2.5 months before the massacre. A mother worries about her withdrawn son, but allows herself to be reassured when he is released early from community service with a glowing assessment of his bright future.
He's a good kid. You don't need to worry about Dylan.
Then 1 month before the massacre, a final warning signal. Dylan Klebold writes a story for English class in which a man who looks like him takes out a gun and fires on students. The teachers call the parents in.
She said it contained some bad language. And she said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll show it to the school counselor and see what he thinks. And then I said, so you'll call us if you think there's a problem. And she said, I will. And we never got a call.
Why didn't you demand to see a paper that had worried the teacher enough to send it to a counselor?
She says they asked Dylan twice. He said he didn't have it. They let it go.
I did not grasp the seriousness of that paper. I don't think any of us did at the time.
We reached out to that high school counselor, now retired, who read the story. He told us in a pre-Columbine world, he just didn't see it as a threat.
That's not a red flag.
It's not a red flag that would be indicative of someone absolutely going out and becoming violent, but it's enough of a red flag to say, okay, let's get going. Let's take a look at this young person.
And O'Toole says if everyone had taken a look, it's striking what could have been seen. It turns out the boss at the pizzeria where Dylan worked had seen the 2 boys experimenting with a pipe bomb. Eric had been sent to therapy, a specialist, a psychologist, who apparently missed the murderous plan. And perhaps most shocking of all, the police knew Eric had a website. 10 pages of savage threats. Some frightened parents had alerted them. Police started to draw up a search warrant, but thinking they don't have enough, do nothing. After Columbine, there would be new systems designed to assess the full picture. But 17 years ago, 2 sets of parents, teachers, the pizza shop boss, counselors, doctors, and the police were all holding pieces of a puzzle, and no one put them together.
And if you're wondering why you haven't heard from Sue Klebold's husband, Tom, after nearly 30 years of marriage, she says they are divorced, driven in different directions by grief, and he has chosen not to speak publicly. When we come back, what was it that finally forced Sue Klebold to face the truth about her son? The day she says she heard those tapes.
So